most listened to show on the internet. Welcome to AEG. I am back, bitches. I'm back, your host, JB, and I have Goose with me this week.
Secrets.
And I have Marlon.
Good evening, guys. How are you doing?
And our special guest, Chris.
I have no idea what I've gotten myself into.
You really, yeah. Hey, you agreed.
I did. I listened to one episode, and obviously I picked the wrong one.
Which one did you listen to?
Not the newest one, but the one right before that.
Okay. All right. Wait, the 2-hour one?
No, the one after that.
Okay.
I didn't have that much time.
Yeah. But
thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Chris, and thank you all for listening tonight. Or today, depending on when you hear this. I don't know. We're recording at nighttime, so I'm going to just say tonight. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a new bill that was introduced in the U.S. Senate. PlayStation did another one of their state of plays. EA made an announcement this week, as did Ubisoft with the Ghost Recon franchise. And then our topic of the week is about AAA publishers and how they can innovate, possibly, on their games going into the future. So I think we'll start off with something a little brief. I mean, it's not much of a discussion point, more as it is like an update. EA Access that's been on Xbox platform and PC for it's been a while now, right? I would say they're coming to PlayStation 4, and so the 10-hour trials that you can do and the discounts and the subscription service, they have like a vault where a lot of their old stuff is in there, which you can play. They're just bringing their subscription service. It's going to be the same price as it is. You can do $5 monthly, or you can do $30 for an entire year. So, I mean, your guys' thoughts. I think in the Discord we pretty much all said it's about time, and I completely agree with that. You know.
Yeah, for the most part, for me as well. I think I think they've been taking their sweet time getting over this hump, but to me, it's like finally. So
yeah, I mean, it's been quite a while that they've been kind of just sitting on the fence about PlayStation. I think it more had to do with Sony as opposed to EA.
I'm glad that you cleared that up, because it clearly wasn't EA. EA wanted to be on the platform for a long time now.
I mean, they have that. They wanted that, extra revenue stream. I mean, and I'm an EA Access subscriber on the Xbox One. I think it's really cool. Mostly for the trials, the 10-hour trials, because a lot of times your progress will carry over, which is super nice. And you can kind of pick up where you left off and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a nice service. If you're really into that company and the sports games and some of the shooters like Battlefield and stuff that they put out, I mean, it's a no-brainer for $5 a month. I mean, that's nothing. That's a meal at McDonald's. That's less than a meal at McDonald's nowadays. So,
I'm happy that it's coming over to Sony, or rather that Sony has finally allowed EA to put it on its system. I just don't think it's the same bang for your buck that you're going to get on Xbox, because of the fact that Xbox has backwards compatibility.
That is true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Nice call, Goose.
So a lot of those games that you automatically get on Xbox, you're not going to be able to get on PlayStation, simply because the console doesn't offer backwards compatibility. So although, it's still $30, your money won't go as far as it will on Xbox. But it's a good get for PlayStation folks. Regardless.
Absolutely. I mean, for future titles especially, but yeah, for their older lineup, like the Dead Spaces and the Mass Effects and stuff that you can play backwards compatible on the Xbox One. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, Goose. That's a good point to point out. But nevertheless, I mean, I think it's a cool thing. I'm happy that EA is able to expand, and that Sony, PlayStation gamers can have that opportunity now.
What would be cool is if Sony could or if EA and Sony could work together and have subscribers of EA Access on the PS4 make use of PlayStation Now, and somehow, if they have titles like Mirror's Edge or Dead Space that were, available on PS3, you'd have the access to play them through there. Although I don't know if that's the case. I doubt it.
That would be cool. I doubt it. Or maybe you do like a bundle subscription where, for an extra $5 a month, so it'd be $10 a month, you get a subscription to PlayStation Now and EA Access, but only the EA games that are in PlayStation Now or something like that. Like I could see them maybe doing something along those lines. But
yeah, it's like me looking through the games that EA has put out. It's like sports games and Unravel.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's about it. And because it's Burnout.
Right. This generation, EA, other than a few big name shooters, it's mostly been sports titles. And a lot of that stuff is really good. Like, the Mass Effect games, the Dragon Age games, like anything that BioWare's put out recently, rest in peace, BioWare. But anything they put out recently on this console generation will be available, for the subscribers and stuff like that. So I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think like Jeff said, I think EA Access is for those folks who really love the output of that publisher. Because I compare it to services like Xbox Game Pass or Netflix, for example. And I just don't see, at least for me, where the fun would be in even giving them $30. Like a lot of the games I just wouldn't want to play, and then they just don't have enough, in my opinion. They just don't have enough enticing content for me, other than their annual sports games, right? And maybe the Battlefields, which you can sort of say they're not sports games, but they're annualized, which we'll touch about shortly. Mm-hmm. So, again, I'm happy. It's a choice. It's a choice for consumers, so I'm happy that they have the choice to subscribe or not to. So it's better than not having the choice at all.
Absolutely. So shifting gears from the EA Access stuff. EA kind of fits in this because of the things that have happened in their past with microtransactions, but there was a bill introduced into the Senate regarding microtransactions. I know, Goose, I think you have a little bit more information on this than I do, so if you want to run with it.
The bill hasn't been introduced yet.
Okay.
I was actually looking for it this morning. I went to Senator Josh Hawley's page from Missouri, and I wasn't able to find an actual bill, but I did find sort of an outline. It's called the Protecting Children from Abusive Games Act, and Senator Hawley's legislation would apply new consumer protections to games played by minors, including games targeted at those under the age of 18, and this would be determined by subject matter, visual content, and other indicators similar to those used to determine applicability of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and games with wider audiences whose developers knowingly allow minor players to engage in microtransactions. So things that would be prohibited in this bill would be things like microtransactions, pay to win, and then he lays out that the rules would be enforced by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. This isn't the first time that we've had someone from Congress try to introduce legislation to curtail microtransactions. Back in the tail end of 2017, we had a representative from Hawaii. Sorry, he was a state legislator. He's not from the federal government, but Chris Lee was trying to introduce a bill. He was trying to draft a bill barring minors from buying games with loot boxes as well. And he's a Democrat, so this is not a partisan issue, I would say, in our hyper-partisan politics. This is definitely a bipartisan issue, and I just don't know. How do you guys feel about this? How do you guys feel about basically the federal government meddling in gaming?
You know me. We've talked about this. I'm not huge into the politics and government intervention and stuff like that. It's not really. I don't like to. It's not my hobby to follow after everything the government does and everything like that. However, my hobby is gaming, and it is what I like to do. Now, I think something like this, for me, wouldn't really matter. Because it's not targeted at me. I'm a grown adult, almost 30 years old. It's not targeted at someone like me about these microtransactions, stuff like that. It is targeted like my kid. My daughter, when she, would eventually get old enough to be able to play this stuff, and these laws might be in place where they can't be predatory about getting kids, minors to, purchase these microtransactions and try to get them to buy this stuff and everything like that. But I something like this is small, but it unfortunately would open up the floodgates, I think, for more regulation in certain aspects of the gaming, business model, let's call it. And that does scare me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'll tell you this. My issue is, let's say the government does put out a bill that says, that loot boxes are going to be banned from, video games henceforth. You're going to be seeing a lot of lobbying from EA executives. I'll tell you that. And EA is a company that does not do lobbying in Washington. They don't support any politician or any cause, but you will be seeing a lot of this. If this bill
Although
happens.
the thing is, though, Marlon, they yes, there are still loot boxes in a lot of their games, but after the Battlefield 2 or Battlefront 2 debacle, they kind of put the kibosh on a lot of that stuff. Not fully,
not really.
but not as much. Exactly, not as much as they could have.
Let me give you some numbers, Jeff, because I don't want to.
Thank you. Off. Yeah, because you have FIFA.
It's currently it's 50% of their revenue comes from loot boxes. From FIFA, from Madden, from all those sports games. We're talking about people.
Consider me not knowing shit.
Like let me put it this way. I know people that spend 10 grand, 20 grand on FIFA points to get those cards. We're talking the YouTubers, the big YouTubers for FIFA,
or 100.
We're talking about 20K, 30K, 50K when Team of the Season comes out. They spend a lot of cash, and that's cash going directly to EA. The minute those things go away, EA is going to be like, nope, I'm not going to have that. And it's not just with loot boxes. It's just the whole central, with microtransactions the way it is, with stickers and cars and all that stuff. It's, the minute you start touching companies' money, that's when they get really pissed and they get really mad about it. They don't mind doing politicians when it comes to ideas or but when it comes to actual their bottom line, they will fight for it. And I know
if the government's trying to stick their hands, quote unquote, stick their hands in the company's pockets, yeah, I can understand. Chris, what do you think?
I know the mobile gaming stuff is going to get hit a lot by it.
Mobile gaming is basically
it just is a microtransaction thing,
right?
Because every time I find a mobile game that I'll sit there and like to play as I'm sitting around, I get to the point where I have to pay money to get extra turns or get something, and then I always just quit the game because I'm cheap. Go find something else.
Understandable. I do this. That's part of the reason I don't even play mobile games anymore at all, is that I don't want to feel forced to spend money.
Go ahead, Gustavo, please.
I would disagree with the assessment that you're cheap, Chris. I just think the scheme. You're able to say, hey, listen, I get what the monetization process is here, and I'm not going to fall for it, right? As opposed to folks who just, for whatever reason, maybe they just can't hold back, or maybe they do have some compulsive addiction issues, and I think that's an actual problem.
There are a lot of people that's where they, when they talk about the quote unquote whales, it's the people that, have one game and that's all they play, but they spend tons and tons of time and money being the main thing, into these games.
Yeah, I still don't want the government in my games, but I'd be open to it in a sense if it was done in a certain way, because I think let me finish.
Oh, sorry. No, go for it. I'm sorry.
Because I think I have to call him out. He's got that bad habit.
I know I do. I really do.
But it's really vague, the way the wording is, and the fact that he hasn't even introduced the bill yet is kind of worrisome. We'll see where it goes. I would hope that the industry could self-correct and self-police, but I just think that it's a bigger symptom of what's going on in the industry in terms of games and the rocketing price or the rocketing cost of development. Right, that's just gone up, and games have been $60 since 2005 when the Xbox 360 launched. So that's another issue. We've spoken about this at length.
We talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, So
I think you
hopefully,
guys talked about it last week.
hopefully developers can, not developers, but hopefully publishers can self-correct.
And I'd hope that some of that vague language gets cleaned up when the bill actually gets introduced too.
Agreed.
This whole thing just read to me like this is pretty close to the idea, pretty close to how I want it, but I want to leave myself some wiggle room in case some people freak out.
Here, guess how much EA makes in Ultimate Team? That this was on the third quarter of 2017.
Okay.
$650 million. Just
Good God.
on microtransactions of Ultimate Team and just
Was that for the fiscal year or like?
No, that was for for revenue in March last year was 650 million after they reached like the third quarter of the year.
Wow.
That was not like
That's nuts.
so the minute you hit their bottom line, they're not gonna like it. And for me, I have no issue with the government policing certain things, but the problem is they have to be very black and white about the wording of that bill. Otherwise, you're gonna have this very vague area that just encompasses everything in the video game industry and just becomes a slippery slope. You know, when does the policing start and when does it end? You know, and for me, that's my issue with government, because they tend to be the ones, like, if they give them a little bit, they will go for the whole arm. You know, they don't stop at just like, oh, we're gonna be, you know, small government, let businesses rule the way they want to do it. No, it doesn't work that way. It always, like, if I can get my hands on something, I'm gonna see if I can get more of that. You know, that's just human nature. So it's
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, that's a lot. But I mean, it's like you said, Goose, until anything is actually introduced, we won't really know what it's gonna bring, or, you know. I mean, the internet kind of blew up over this thing a lot, and I mean, we really don't know much about it yet.
Dude,
I could see why. I mean, people always want to use video games as a scapegoat. You know, it happened with movies, it happened with comic books. It's gonna happen with video games. I don't know. I mean,
look at back in the day with all the violent video game stuff, and, you know, government.
Yeah, the hot coffee
officials. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, they're gonna use something that's quote unquote popular as a scapegoat. So I can see where you're coming from there, Goose, for sure. But moving on from that, there was some big announcements this week. Ubisoft did an entire live stream regarding the new Ghost Recon game, which, one, I'm surprised they introduced this close to E3, or they wanted to get ahead of it because they're going to show off more, I'm assuming, at E3. But they revealed a new Ghost Recon game, a sequel to Wildlands called Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which personally I think looks phenomenal. It's going to take a lot of the gameplay mechanics and utilize them in this new space. It's a completely new area. I mean, the tech looks incredible, I think. They're going to be... the story is going to be you're fighting basically a rogue group of ghosts called the Wolves. The head guy is going to be played by the guy that played the Punisher in the Netflix show. I can't think of his name.
John Bernthal.
Thank you. And it's out soon. It's out October 4th. What do you guys think?
I'm hella excited for it. I didn't finish Wildlands, the first one, but I put roughly about 50 to 60 hours into it, and that world was massive. That world was big. And, you know, I saw people online complain about, oh, it's more of the same, but I'm fine with more of the same if it works. Like, one of my biggest issues with the first game was the driving, like the driving mechanics were just really bad.
Yeah, I went back and played it this week, and whew, man, dude, I forgot how bad the driving was in that game.
Yeah, the driving's pretty bad. The cars, all of the cars throughout the game feel very floaty, and you really don't feel like you're controlling them on any type of terrain.
Yep.
I didn't like the contextual cover system. I wish they had a sort of like a stop and pop
snap cover system.
Yeah, like a snap covers, correct. Like Gears, I would have appreciated that. And on the trailer or the gameplay that they showed, looks like you're going to have that. So it really looks like it's an iteration and a refinement of what came before. And what I'm most excited about is that this game is going to have a raid. They didn't say when it was going to have a raid, but it's going to have
post-launch.
Post-launch is going to have a raid. It's going to take place in this setting called the Aurora Islands. It's a private compound owned by the, like, I think the antagonists. I think they're called the Skells or something. Jay Skell.
Jay Skell. He's like a technician that is basically from like the 90s till this. I think it's like set in like 2023 or something like that. Has basically used technology to evolve the world essentially, and then his base, which is on this Aurora Island, gets overtaken by this clan called the Wolves.
Initially, I was a little disappointed with the setting because the majority of Ghost Recon games prior to it have taken in real world settings. For example, the one before it took place in Bolivia, and there was a little bit of controversy where actually the Bolivian government petitioned the French government to like have Ubisoft not release the game because they're like, how dare you depict my country as a like a crappy third world country, which it is. So I'm a little not upset, but I'm a little taken aback by it. I'm like, man, it would have been cool if they would have. But I'm pretty sure like they'll they won't be bound to a real world setting, so they can make up whatever they want, which probably.
Well, yeah, I mean, like a lot of the stuff that they showed, especially in the raid content, that the teaser that they showed for the raid, like looks super futuristic, and they couldn't really do something like that had they stuck to a real world setting. Because like there's a volcano on that island and stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot more that they can do with it not being set, in the real world. So
it's more to do with like litigation and stuff like that. A lot of countries don't like their countries being shown as a like bad light. They like being like, oh, we don't show the good stuff. We want to put like a good front for the world. And I don't have a horse in this race because I didn't play the last Ghost Recon. So for me, it's like,
no, you didn't.
No, I didn't. Even though you guys asked me to play it multiple times,
Dude, I played the shit out of that game.
Yes, you did. Justin's still bothering me about that, saying, "Why didn't you get Ghost Recon?" Well, it was.
God, I played that game. I probably put like 80 hours into that game. I put so much time into that game.
What did you get instead, Marlon?
I think it was Monster Hunter.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And I put like 450
Was that
hours
the same? Was that the same year? I didn't think that was the same year.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. It wasn't the same year. It was the thing that you guys were playing Ghost Recon at that time, and it was between that or it was between Monster Hunter and what was the other game?
No, was it Dying
Blackout?
Light?
Was it Blackout? Yeah.
I forget.
No, Dying Light was earlier too, but yeah, I mean it. Honestly, I didn't even play it when it first came out.
What, Ghost Recon?
Yeah, I waited about a month or so till afterwards, and I finally picked it up and started digging into it. And then all of my friends at the time had gotten it too, and then we co-opted the crap out of it for like, oh god, it was probably like 2 months.
That trailer looked really intense. But one of the things that I don't want to question it, although I will, is that it looks like they're focusing on narrative, and I guess I could see why they're doing it because like the worst aspect of the first one was its narrative. Like I call that the first one I called the podcast game. When I wasn't playing it with my friends, I would just put on a podcast and just do collectibles and clear out bases and things like that. And I really enjoyed it in that sense. So I'm like, how much better is the narrative going to be in the second game? I guess they're bringing some star power with John Bernthal, but I'll give him a shot. It looked like something I'd like. I don't know if you guys saw the film Triple Frontier on Netflix.
Yes.
But it reminded me of that. It was really I
agree.
All right.
That was a good movie, by the way.
Ghost Recon came out in March 7th, 2017. So
okay.
I think it was the DLC was coming out around January or something like that last year, where Justin was like, "You need to get this. You need to play this." I'm like, I'm trying to get this game, kind of called Monster Hunter. You want to jump in? It's like, let me think about it. So yeah, and when I saw you guys playing Ghost Recon, it was really good. I liked the mechanics of it. I liked the world. It was very pretty. But like, again, I don't have a horse in this race, so it's more with you guys than for me.
Wait a minute. Does Chris have a horse in this race?
Not really. I mean, I just never got into shooters. It looks good.
Gotcha.
Do you play Monster Hunter though?
I don't play Monster Hunter either. I've still got my Super Nintendo hooked up. That's right.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, what kind of stuff, what kind of games do you play, Chris? Completely tangent.
Yeah, I know. Catching up on a lot of RPG stuff, but it's like PS1 and Super Nintendo RPGs.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that, my man.
Man, we needed Dalton for the show. Our friend Dalton loves RPGs, dude.
Yeah,
Especially the PS1 ones.
Boy, he has really missed out on the episodes that would benefit him the most.
Yes, he has.
And then I missed out on the episode last week that would I had a lot to say. Dude, I was screaming at my friggin' earphones when you guys were talking.
Yeah, but it looks good. I'm excited for it. It's a day one, so
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm absolutely all in on that one. Even if and this one actually looks a lot more single player focused, at least what they showed in the gameplay demo.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because obviously it's gonna launch with 4-player co-op, competitive right off the bat. But if you play, which you didn't have at the launch of the first one, co-op was added later. But if you choose to play it solo, unlike the first one where you could command the AI, you won't have that. You'll be going in basically lone wolf if you decide to play it solo or offline without friends, which I'm kind of looking forward to, because although it was fun to sync up shots with the AI, it sort of, at least for me, it sort of felt like a burden to have to marshal them around and tell them to do this. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad that
solo is going to be the way I play it anyway.
Fair enough. Yeah. So
I generally play solo stuff. I mean, I play stuff solo majority of the time anyway, even if it is designed for co-op. Like, well, we'll get into it in here in just a second. But yeah, I'm super excited for Breakpoint. It's a day one for me. I'm almost already pulling the trigger on it. So, I don't care about the stupid gold edition steelbook or anything like that. But
are you gonna get the gold edition?
You missed that conversation.
I know. I know I did.
Am I getting the gold edition? Yes, I am.
I am not. I'm getting the standard edition.
Standard edition. I like that.
But yeah, moving on from Ghost Recon.
Moving on to more announcements.
Yes. Sony did another PlayStation State of Play this week, which they dropped a few little gems here and there, such as they announced a console exclusive game from the developers of the Friday the 13th game that came out 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago, called Predator Hunting Grounds, which is basically the same style. It's the asymmetric, like 8v1, 4v1 multiplayer, but one person plays as a predator and the other plays soldiers, which sounds fucking awesome. Like, count me in on that one. They also announced a game called Away. Is it just Away, or is it Away a survival experience or a survival adventure?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I just call it the game with the sugar glider.
Yeah, flying squirrel the game. It looks pretty cool. I have no idea what it's going to really be about. They didn't really say anything what it's going to be about.
To give kudos to Sony, just real quick on that one trailer, Away. At first, I was a little like, well, what is this? But then I'm like, no, this is Sony, and I just want to give props to Sony. As arrogant as they've been a little bit these past couple of years with other stuff relating PlayStation, they've always been really good at giving developers a chance to make like these quirky games that other developers just focus on bottom line only really wouldn't even like deign to like invest money in. They're really good at that. I think of games like Africa back in the day on PS3 was that photography game where those quirky little things like that no other publisher would invest money in. They're like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. We'll give you a shot. Or Puppeteer.
Sony is very much like that.
Yeah, they really try to give the creatives a shot.
A lot of their indie stuff. Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, I mean, it looks interesting. I don't know if I'll play it or may not play it when it first comes out. But I mean, it looks something interesting.
When it comes on PS Plus, I'll play it.
Yeah, that's probably about when I'll play it too. Let's see. They also gave a date for Medieval, the remake hack and slash that they're going to be doing. Comes out in October 25th, so right in time for Halloween, which it's kind of a spooky game, so that makes sense.
I have a question for you guys regarding Medieval. It looks cool. I don't know if it'll be a day one. It may be because the price is like $30, which I think it's fair
it's 30
for that game.
bucks.
But I was thinking, and I'm like, Sony isn't going to be at E3, and they haven't really announced anything big for the holiday. And I'm like, there's no way Medieval could be their big first party game.
I doubt it.
I'm starting to think that it may very well be.
I mean, it might be.
I would hope not.
I would hope not too, but I don't know what else they could really. I mean, they're not going to be at E3, so they're not going to be like, okay, this is our big tentpole release for the fall.
Like Days Gone is out already.
Yeah.
I used to think that The Last of Us 2 was going to come out this year, and now I'm starting to think that it's not. So I'm like, man,
who did a bet with me with that one?
I think I did.
Yeah, okay. I think you also already owe me like 2 steak dinners from previous bets.
Yes. Yeah, I do owe you 2 steak dinners. This is true.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're gonna pull out of their hat. If it's, I'm thinking they don't release anything big for the fall. Because honestly, what's other than Gears 5, what's Microsoft gonna have?
Yeah, you're right.
Halo Infinite's not gonna be this year.
No, you're right. Halo Infinite isn't going to be this year.
Gears 5 will for sure be, and I'm going to guess a shoot for a November release on that one.
Yeah, I think Gears 5 will be Xbox's or Microsoft's tentpole first party game.
Absolutely.
They may have like some indies or something with well, it's not really an indie because Microsoft is publishing, but an indie like feel with Ori and the Will of the Wisp or whatever.
Will of the Wisp. Yeah.
So that may be something, but
yeah. But switching back to Sony and other things they announced at this State of Play, they announced, well, they showed off the first trailer. It had already previously been announced, but they showed off the first trailer for the Monster Hunter expansion. Speaking of Monster Hunter, I'm sure Marlon is super excited about this.
Yes, I am, because I will be playing another 450 hours on Iceborne, especially with that new flagship. Dragon.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of the new monsters that they showed off in that trailer look amazing, especially that like one that was throwing like freaking trees at them and stuff. Like it looks, that game is so interesting. I really like, honestly, to tell you the truth, I started playing it again. I started from the very beginning because I really didn't play a lot when it first came out.
Gotcha.
And I mean that game is great. You need to have people to play with that game.
Yes, you do. There's one mechanic that they kind of just glossed over in the trailer. A lot of people didn't put too much attention to it, but it is the fact that you're now are going to have the ability of being able to be revived in mid-game, or in mid-hunt, I should say.
By your feline?
Yes, by your palico.
Palico, that's what it's called.
To me is like a godsend when it comes to certain bosses, because I mean, nobody likes getting one-shotted. It's nobody likes busting their butt trying to get a monster down, cutting up their tail, taking out their horns out, and then only to be just one-shotted by some random thing happening in the middle of the fight. So having that little option of just being able to, being revived mid-game or mid-hunt, it's pretty awesome. Although I feel it's gonna be like a palico specific tool. Like
it'll be something that you'll maybe be able to only use like once or twice per battle or per mission quest.
Yeah, I don't see that being like a recurring thing that you can just spam it over.
Yeah, I mean that would make the game infinitely way too easy.
So
and kind of defeat the purpose of the game.
I have a question for Marlon. Like, I saw the price tag on the expansion, and it's pretty. I mean, it's $40, which isn't bad, but I'm expecting a lot of content for $40. Like, did they announce that they're gonna, add like a new landmass or something?
Yeah, it is.
Because it looks like
it's a new landmass, and it's not only gonna add a new landmass. It's gonna add new armor, new weapons, new bosses that not only are they going to be in the new Iceborne expansion, but they're going to be in the Ancient Forest and and all the other areas that you play in the game. Also, Capcom has been really good about being able to just add content into this game. for free. I mean, the content that they have put up for this game is pennies on the dollars compared to what other developers have done. And from the first game, and it was all free from the get-go, all the way from now. So when it comes to expansions, Capcom tends to do for the Monster Hunter, they tend to price them like a normal price. Like, for example, when Monster Hunter Ultimate came out, they priced it for the same price as Monster Hunter Ultimate X, because it is a new expansion, new rank, new everything. But that's just the way Japanese people work when it comes to that certain expansions. They
Especially with Monster Hunter.
So they don't do it like DLC. Now they're doing it in a DLC form, which I understand the price tag. And they're also probably going to have like bundles for like the complete edition, and they're going to have bundles.
Yes,
for,
they're doing what's called the Master Edition, which is $60 for the standard, or they're doing an $80 special edition with the Steelbook. Which it'll give you the base Monster Hunter World game and the Iceborne expansion all in one. I know GameStop, it's exclusive to them, but they are doing a, for the PlayStation 4 is the only thing that's available right now, but it's like a $60 upgrade, like special edition, where you can get the Steelbook and everything like that, and you get Iceborne by itself. For $60, but you still can have the Steelbook and still be able to add that to your collection with your already purchased like copy of Monster Hunter World. So
I think I may pick it up only because I got the game like on a Best Buy price error like for $10 last year because of Black Friday. So I may give him $40 and try it out. One of the things that does look.
Go ahead.
One of the things that does look cool is the I'm reading it right now, the Clutch Claw.
Oh,
it looks like it's like a new. I don't want to say gimmick. That sounds reductive. Like this new little mechanic that they're gonna have in the game, which sounds kind of cool.
And for me, when I saw that, I thought, okay, this is gonna change how I go about hunts completely, because there's certain bosses that I tend to just hate dealing with because their mechanics are just so annoying. I'm looking at you, Karen, but. This might actually help. This might actually make it so I can enjoy those hunts even more now and go for the platinum for once in my life in that thing. I love Monster Hunter, but some of the mechanics are like, what the hell?
For the listeners out there, our very own Marlon is a big fan of Monster Hunter. He's put about north of 400 hours into that game.
Yeah, I was gonna say I really want to. Like, this is the most user-friendly version of Monster Hunter that they've ever made ever, and I want to really get into it. And I have started. I put like 3 hours in over the last couple of days. I just got to the desert area. I mean, it's good, but I don't honestly. I want to get the expansion because it comes out here in the next couple of months, but it comes out literally a week from Borderlands 3, and for me personally, that's going to be a really difficult decision to make.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like, if you're not going to play it now when you don't have Borderlands out, you're not going to play it when Borderlands 3 comes out.
No.
It's just a given. And the Wellspire Waste, it's a decent locale. I enjoy some of the bosses there. Just wait until you get to Coral Reef. You will really like that part. I'll tell you that.
I was gonna say I'm looking forward. I want to at least try to get through like the main quote unquote storyline and like the main quest line of Monster Hunter, just so I can at least say that I finished it. But I'm working on it. Rage 2 comes out tomorrow, so that's gonna be kind of difficult. I'll probably start getting into that over the next weekend. So.
Moving on to the star of the state of play.
So I mean, all of this was all appetizers compared to the freaking souffle of a dessert that they plopped on this thing. Final Fantasy VII Remake had a trailer. What?
Yeah.
What?
It looks sweet. It looks
pretty,
sweet,
isn't it?
Yes, it does.
Oh, we've got Chris talking now. He's like, wait a minute, my ears are perking up.
I know.
RPG.
Right? See, now we're getting to the games I actually care about.
There you go.
Hey, at least he's honest about it, okay?
I say that, and I'm not even sure when I'll get it because I've still got my PS1 copy. I've still got my PS3 hooked up. So, I mean, it's not like I need to buy it to
enjoy
get
it.
wireless controllers out of it. But I'm still probably going to get it pretty early.
Actually,
That's
I'm
damn pretty.
I'm glad that you're on, Chris, because maybe you can speak to this. Like, do you think that Square Enix could live up to these like gargantuan expectations on like this revered game, Final Fantasy VII? Like, what, like you as a fan, what are you expecting out of it?
See, part of why I liked playing those games growing up was the turn-based battles, and my mom could yell up the stairs and get me to do something, and I didn't have to pause the game or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they're going to get away from that because everything else has. I don't want them to. So I hope there's an option where I can go back to that. But, somebody's going to whine because they changed it away from turn-based battles, and somebody's going to whine because they took some parts out that just don't fit in so well in what society allows now. And other people are going to whine because that stayed in. So, I mean, there's no winning
There's
at the
no
part,
winning in this,
at all.
Specifically in this game. Like, it's in anything Square Enix, there's no winning. Like, the fanboys are damned if you do, damned if you don't. They always have been.
I think there is a way to do it. So I'll give two examples of games that straddle the line, remasters that straddle the line and are faithful to, the players that are expecting something modern, but are also faithful to the players who originally played the game. So, for example, Halo: The Master Chief Collection was very good at this. They had remastered visuals, upgraded textures, and all that. But at the toggle of one button, you could literally just go back and play the game the way it was originally played back on Xbox 360 and the OG Xbox. And I hope that Square Enix could do something like that, where you don't necessarily toggle a visual mode, but I think of games like Persona 5, who did turn-based RPG systems exceptionally well. So, they may not necessarily have to follow the same formula as the predecessor in Final Fantasy VII, but if they could do something like that for people who wish to play the game that way. Dragon Quest XI also has something like that, where they change the camera, where you can have like a static turn-based battle system, and then you have another one where it's action-based. So they could definitely do it, especially because, I mean, it's different teams within Square Enix, but, Square Enix publishes both Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, so hopefully they can do something for fans like Chris, who, have nostalgia for the old game and how it was played. And even, like, deeper callbacks, because, we all know that Final Fantasy VII had pretty bad translation, right? And people still remember that fondly, so if they could keep that in as well, that'd be pretty cool. But I don't know, these are just ideas.
I'll tell you something that I really I'm gonna be curious about how they do about it, is that there's so many scenes in Final Fantasy VII that, like Chris said, they don't belong in this type of era that we're living right now, because everything is so, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Hypersensitive.
Yeah, hypersensitive. There's a scene where Titus, look at me, where Cloud gets dressed up as a woman to infiltrate a base and deal with some thugs. I don't see that happening in the new remake. I'm sorry, I don't see Cloud, being in drag for that. I mean, it will be funny as hell if that happened, but I don't see that happening now. There's so many like quirky things that the game has had over the years that people forget about, and looking back on it, you're like, would this work? I don't know. Now, would I keep
Barrett and the stereotypes that he brought, right?
Oh, don't even get me.
I know.
Racist ass stereotypes.
Don't even get me started on that, because that's a field day right there for everybody else. But I'll tell you this.
I mean, you can see in the trailer they already took a lot of his bulk away.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They make the thing for me though is I want to wait, because if this game comes out for the PC, I cannot wait to see what the modding community does with that game. That's my goal, because when Monster Hunter came out, it was very run of the mill, your typical Monster Hunter game, when it was put for PC, people went nuts with the modding of that game. And same thing happened with Dark Souls, same thing happened with Minecraft, same thing happened with any type of PC game that has a large following. You're going to have a lot of people that mod it to make it to where they wanted it to be, you know? And if the game does not come out with a, you know, your typical, you know, RPG, you know, slow time system, you know, they're going to make it. They're going to make their old ATP and they're just going to make it like the old one. You know? So it's I thought that it was beautiful when the trailer came out, because when the first trailer came out in E3, I thought it would look pretty, but this one just made me look at Aerith and go, I'm going to cry when I see you get snapped. I'm going to cry when I see you get stabbed in the back. I hate you, Sephiroth, already, okay?
So what do you guys think about this, about the release date? Do you guys think this is a 2020 game?
What did you say in the Discord, Goose? You said 2020?
I think it's a 2020 game. I mean, we all know that CyberConnect was originally working on it, and then Square Enix stepped in and wasn't happy with their progress and took it away from them, which I always thought was a stupid move. Why would you leave the development of probably your most highly regarded franchise up to an external developer? It should have always been developed in-house, and they did that. But I think that they've got something up and running relatively soon compared to when they took over. So I'm hoping it's a 2020 game.
I did see that there are still a lot of rumors circulating that this is still an episodic game. I know they haven't said one way or the other, so it may not be the full release next year, but I could possibly be seeing the first episode get released.
I just don't see why it needs to be episodic, besides the fact that we want to milk money out of this, to be honest. Like, I know there was a lot of stuff going around on the Discord, and I think between, you know, our friends KJ and Dalton about why the first game was so long and why it was spread throughout, I think, what was it, 4 discs or something?
3 or 4, yeah.
But that's only because it didn't fit on the 700 megabyte CDs. It's not because the game was massive or something. I mean, it was you know, standard for regular JRPGs back in the day. So I don't see why this wouldn't fit.
What do you think, Chris? Do you think it should be episodic, or do you think it should be just a big one game and leave it like that?
I want the whole thing in one shot.
Yeah.
Episodic to me just leaves open the possibility of it not doing as well as they want, and then they never finish it.
Yeah,
that will be horrible.
That's a good point.
That's a good point, man. Think about it, because Final Fantasy VII, it is a cult classic that has become a worldwide, you know, love and favorite franchise. Like, even between all Final Fantasy games, you know, everybody remembers Final Fantasy VII like, oh my god, this was the best game when I was a little kid, you know. Even though myself,
that's the game that pretty much got Americans playing RPGs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
like, that's Dalton's favorite game. Dalton loves Final Fantasy VII. Like, he says it all the time. He's like, oh my god, Final Fantasy VII is so good. It's my favorite one. Like, I can't believe people talk about 9 and 10 like those games suck. I love 7. So Dalton loves Final Fantasy VII, dude. You've no idea.
I can't keep a straight face. I'm sorry. I can't.
I don't know. I apologize, Chris, on behalf of Marlon. He's just having like a fit of laughter or something.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, it's like I'll sit there and, you know, Valkyrie Profile is prettier, and some of the other Final Fantasy games might have better mechanics for stuff, but Final Fantasy VII just hit at the right time.
Unlike 10.
You're gonna kill. You're gonna get. Look,
Dalton's gonna murder
Chris,
you.
If you don't see it from Gustavo ever again, I will tell you. After
Thank
the show.
you.
So for me, I'm more of a fan of Final Fantasy V and 6. So those are the ones that I enjoy because I'm just hardwired that way.
Weren't those on SNES?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones. I'm more of an old school type of guy when it comes to Final Fantasy games. I enjoy 7, 8, 9, even though 9 was a pain in the ass and screw me over with their stupid, you know, magic nullifying boss, but whatever, you know, it is what it is. 10, I loved it. I think it was one of the first games that had actual, you know, voice acting to the point where every scene and stuff like that. 11, online. 12 didn't like their battle system. I thought it was a little bit too antiquated, and yet it made me feel like I was not part of the battle. I feel like I was just more of a guy pressing a button and just let the game play by itself, especially with how you could hardwire those characters. 13, love the mechanics of the game. It hated the story, but that's just going into a tangent that I'd rather hear Chris talk about that than me.
Well, Chris, do you have anything you want to add real quick before we move on?
No, I'm just really excited for this one. This is a lot. I finally got a PS4 a few months ago, and it was just because of Spider-Man, and I knew it because this was happening.
Fair enough.
I'm happy for you,
man. Spider-Man was good, and I have a feeling this is going to be good too. So
wait a minute, Chris. I can't let this go. You said you just got a PS4 a couple months ago because of Spider-Man. We're not going to talk about PS4, dude. What retro games do you play?
It's been a lot of PlayStation stuff lately, and a lot of stuff for my show that I've had to kind of brush up on.
So I know that you focus on comics based on video games. So are you just playing these games for fun recreationally, or since you mentioned they're for your show, is it anything that, is there a project that you're working towards?
I'm just wanting to make sure I actually know what I'm talking about when I do it on the show.
Gotcha.
Fair enough. Good. That's always a great reason. I respect that. I can get behind that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot better show when somebody actually knows what they're talking about.
Generally how things work.
For the most part, yeah. Well, so what is it that you're playing on PS1 currently? Could you talk to that a little bit?
Right now, I haven't been able to touch it for a while because I've been on a run of games for the show that I just don't know as well. But I was trying to start up Valkyrie Profile again because it had just been way too long since I had done anything with it, and I had to start over.
I've heard good things about that game. I've never personally played it.
That's Tri-Ace, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's old. I'm looking it up on YouTube right now. That was like published in 1999. So it's one of those like older. Well, not older. It means it's older relative to us, but it came out late in the life cycle of the PS1. Yeah,
like it was still just Enix doing it. I got really lucky one day, and one of my friends went up to Goodwill, and in the stack of loose disc spindle, they had somebody's PS1 RPG collection. Ooh. And at this Goodwill, loose discs are like $1 or $2 a piece. Doesn't matter what they are.
Shoot.
So he grabbed the whole thing.
Yeah, I would have.
And you said you're making your way through it right now?
Yeah, like I'm real early in it because it's one of those games that I keep wanting to start playing and trying to start playing, and then something comes up and I can't play for too long and I don't know what's going on. And it's got this timer system in it, kind of like Majora's Mask, where you can't sit there and pop in an unlimited number of hours in it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So it's a. Go ahead, Marlon.
No, I'm saying that's the same problem that I had with Valkyrie Profile 2. The one for the PlayStation 2. That's the issue that I had with you. Like, you start it, you want to play, you want to finish it. A new PS4 game come out. Okay, I'll go play that. And I never go back and finish it. That's my issue right there.
So independent of Valkyrie Profile, are there any other ones that you may want to bring attention to that you've been playing?
No, other than that, it's pretty much just been things for the show. Like last one I put out was Superman for Game Boy, which I played around with a little bit. It's really horrible.
Yeah. I owned that as a kid. It's pretty bad. Yeah.
I own it now just because it kind of looks good sitting on the shelf.
Yeah, the cover is pretty cool. Yeah, I'm surprised the battery on the Game Boy cartridge still works.
Oh, I mean that one doesn't save anyway.
Okay.
So, have you played?
I think it's like a 2D scroller, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that quite fondly.
Have you tried playing Superman 64?
I have.
It's
rough.
I'd rather do waxing than play that game. I'll tell you that. That's how rough it is.
Yeah. I don't mind hard games, but I like them to be like Mega Man hard, where you still know what you're supposed to do and you could pull it off and stuff, not like somebody coded it while they were drunk.
Yeah, I hear you. You want something that's fair, right? You don't want something that's bad because of design.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us, Chris. Appreciate it. But that brings us to our topic of the week. And that is how can AAA publishers innovate when it comes to games? Goose gave out an example. Folks like Ubisoft, EA, Activision develop games that aren't Assassin's Creed, FIFA, or Call of Duty all the time. Basically, how can they come up with new, fresh ideas that aren't their main franchises, and make money off of them?
That's the $1 million question.
It really is.
The reason I brought it up was because I'm a nerd when it comes to games, and I like behind the industry type stuff, behind the scenes. And I saw this article over at Game Industry, where there was an opinion by one of the editors, Rob Fahey, where he's like, hey, listen, these companies invest millions of dollars in their own properties, and they just keep churning them out year after year. And he gave examples like FIFA and Call of Duty, and I thought of Call of Duty, and a couple years back, I was a Call of Duty hater. I didn't like the game. I just felt like each game was just a different skin, but basically the same game. But this entire generation, beginning with Advanced Warfare, I bought every single Call of Duty. And through playing them throughout the years of this generation, I've realized that there's quality there. Activision takes its time to put a quality product every single year. They invested and got a third studio, right? So we have 3 rotating studios putting out Call of Duty every year, which means that every Call of Duty gets a 3-year development life cycle, which is good. You always want more time when it comes to developing games to make sure that you can get as much as possible in there. There was a little bit of innovation with Black Ops 4 when it came to the Battle Royale, but still that really wasn't innovation inherently. They just copied and pasted a formula and made it work for Call of Duty. And I'm like, what if a developer like Activision took those resources and that know-how and just said, hey, we're going to spend it on a new IP. And that article was like, hey, they haven't done that. I think the last new IP they put out was Sekiro, but before that I don't remember what was left.
And that's technically them just putting money into the machine. I mean, that's not their game, that's not their baby. You think of on the flip side with Ubisoft, now, yes, they have more than just Assassin's Creed. They have Ghost Recon, they have
Watch Dogs.
They have The Crew, Rainbow Six, For Honor. They have different IPs. For Honor for them was a brand new IP, and that came out 2 years ago now?
Yeah, that was a brand new IP.
And same with The Crew, and Rainbow Six wasn't, Ghost Recon wasn't, Assassin's Creed wasn't. Those have been around for years and years. But the thing with them now is instead of innovating and keeping new ideas in each of the games, they're kind of taking a lot of cues from each of their games and putting them in every game that they produce and publish. And the same thing with...
Ubisoft gets flack for this, and a lot of people call it Ubi House style. I kind of like that term. It's a way that they develop games, and it's efficient for them, and it works, right?
It's the house dressing of
Ubisoft.
Of Ubisoft.
Yeah, they have their towers and stuff.
Apparently, a dump truck driving through Goose's house right now.
This is true. But one of the cool things that I've noticed about Ubisoft that they have done, but they're still not creating new IP with it. So Assassin's Creed was a certain game, and the past 2 Assassin's Creed have been a completely different game, right? And it feels to me like they're saying, hey, listen, we know that you're tired of the same old Assassin's Creed formula, and we're going to switch it up. But instead of making a new IP, we're going to switch it up and refresh the franchise within the franchise. And I'm like, you could have just farmed that out to new IP or something, and that probably would have been awesome. But I get why they wouldn't do it, because it's a risky proposition. Assassin's Creed is a known brand, so hey, let's test out these experiments on an existing franchise.
For me, what I really would love to see make a comeback, in a video game, something like that. The Shadow, that is one of DC and Marvel have so many superheroes and stuff like that they don't tap into. we always get the Batmans, we always get the Supermans, the Spider-Mans, but there's so many great characters in that DC pantheon of heroes and superheroes. I mean, for me, I would love to see a new Shadow game, or at least more new comic books coming out for the Shadow. And even then, you have new IPs that bomb, and then the developer goes, okay, and then we're gonna try this again, and it gets shelved in like some random lot, whatever it happened in the company. And I mean, I understand why companies do that. Nobody likes losing money. At the end of the day, that you want to have that next golden goose, that next Call of Duty, that next FIFA that just keeps bringing money over and over and over again. But sometimes I think you need to do like a risk. I think companies should take a risk once in a while. Especially EA with all the fucking money that they're getting.
I was gonna say, to EA's credit, they had made choices and tried to push new IPs such as Dead Space, such as Mirror's Edge, but none of that shit caught on.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you mentioned that. You literally took the words out of my mouth. I know that I usually do that to you and it feels good, but now you did it to me. It doesn't feel good. But Jeff is absolutely right. Back in 2008, EA CEO was John Riccitiello, and they had Mirror's Edge, they had Dead Space, they had the Saboteur, they had Dante's Inferno. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Saboteur was Pandemic's last game.
I thought it was Ubisoft, but no, you're right. It was Pandemic.
Yep. That was Pandemic's last game. Yeah, that's crazy. They had all these games, and he's right. Like none of them really caught on. And then I know that maybe some of the listeners will say, "Well, they have Apex Legends." Yeah, they do, but they stumbled upon that. It wasn't like it was a concerted effort to put that product out to market. It was Respawn was working on that well before they were purchased by EA, and then EA purchased them, and then they got Apex and they put it out, and it just took off thanks to great non-marketing and word of mouth and streamers, and they really stumbled upon that. So it wasn't like they were working towards that, but I would love it.
Dumb luck, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would love it if if these big AAA publishers, Activision, Ubisoft, EA, would just take a shot across the bow and say, hey, listen, we're going to work on new IP. And I think it's harder to do so as the generation continues. It's a riskier proposition to put new IP out in the market when the generation has fully matured or is about to end. But I think that with the new consoles coming in the next 18 months or so, or maybe even less, I think that would be a great time to test the waters and put new IP. I think of Sony back with the PS3 days. In 2007, we had Uncharted. In 2008, in 2009, we had Killzone 2. We had Infamous as well. We had Resistance in its launch in 2006. So those three in particular, Uncharted, Infamous, and Resistance, were three big new IPs that Sony took a shot on, and one of them at least caught on big with Uncharted. And Resistance and Infamous didn't sell as well, but they were critically loved. So I think hopefully with the beginning of the new generation, publishers release new IP and stop banking on their established backlogs.
Do you think that they should? Because the thing for me is like it's not to do more with having new IPs and stuff like that. It's just being able to create new games from that push the envelope. For me, like it doesn't have to be like a new IP. It can be an old IP that they just have sitting in the back burner. Like a game from like the Super Nintendo or from the Nintendo 64, stuff like that, but just done right. Because a lot of the remakes they just are not done in a correct way, which it's actually back into the Final Fantasy VII thing. Like if they don't do the remake correctly, it's gonna bomb, and people are gonna let them know. But I think it's just more to do with doing games right, not rushing development, just making sure that everything just flows correctly, that they have a team that is willing to do right by the IP, do right by the remake, do right by the story that they're trying to write, by the game that they're trying to make. Look at Anthem. That development was just hell, and the game suffered because of it. So that's just my.
Well, I guess you technically can consider Anthem a new IP by EA.
which it was.
Published by EA, but
You're right about that. It was a new IP by EA, and they invested millions of dollars into it, and because of in studio politicking and bad management and horrible upper management, the game flopped. But I sort of push back against Marlon's claims that it doesn't have to be a new IP. I think it sometimes should, because you look at games like, again, COD and FIFA, and those are excellently produced games. Like, no one will question the production values of those games, but because they have a pedigree, there's a precedent to them, right? There's predecessors to these games. They're beholden to what they have to deliver, right? So I think the people creating these games can innovate only so much before the game becomes something different, completely different, that fans may or may not want, probably won't want. Right. Whereas with new IP, it's a blank canvas, which is harder, right? Because you're starting from scratch, but you can just say, hey, listen, this is something crazy that we're going to try to do, and it's going to be completely different and probably hasn't been done before. Like, my point with it is like, hey, I think with new IP we get more innovation. Although Marlon is right in a sense, because you could bring back like old IP, like for example, like everybody's been clamoring for Splinter Cell to come back, right? And they could bring it back, and they could do something completely radical and different, but they're still going to be beholden to some of what they've done before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see your point of view on that.
I mean, there's really no answer for this question that you're bringing to the table. I mean, there's nothing that we can really say. I mean, these companies are, at the end of the day, in it to make money. Yes, they want to, make gamers happy and put out a good game, but at the end of the day, they're there to make money, and they're gonna stick with what is making them money.
If we as consumers aren't sitting there showing that we're willing to buy something new, then they're not going to make it. I mean, it's really that simple.
Thank you, Chris. That's kind of the point look at, like what I just said with, a little bit ago with Dead Space and Mirror's Edge, yeah, we bought those games, but they did not sell enough for EA to be like, oh, wow, okay, those games, these gamers want something new. They want something different other than the Battlefields and the FIFAs and the Maddens and all that stuff. Yeah, we can do that stuff too, but we also have these new games that everybody wants to play. But no, they did. I mean, they sold well. They kind of declined over the course of that trilogy, the Dead Space trilogy, and so they canned the project, and we haven't seen it since. So I mean, if we don't vote with our wallet, as we've said many times before, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, you guys are right on the money on that one. Unfortunately, it is about it's about the dollar at the end of the day. It kind of sucks, to be honest.
It does.
Bring Legend of Dragoon back, please.
Bring what back?
Legend of Dragoon, like a decent remake of Legend of Dragoon. I would love that.
Oh, I know.
I thought you said Panzer Dragoon.
Well, that too.
I mean, I was gonna say I would agree with you either way.
Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, please. Don't kill it. Don't leave it just sitting there. Come on. It's like you look back at the PlayStation, library, and you have so many good IPs there that just been sitting gathering dust. And what do we get? Your crappy old, Madam NFL 2025. After all this, I'm like, give me a break, man. This is my issue with sports games. Okay, my issue with sports games is that the amount of innovation that each iteration of the game comes out every year is minuscule to the amount of money they want you to pay for it. It's like, oh, the defense is better in this game. It wasn't bad. It was bad before in the last game, but it's better. But if you notice how EA tends to do their sports games, they tend to put the best example of that game at the beginning of the cycle of when the game comes out, then start doing updates to it and making it progressively a little bit more slower, worse to worse to worse, to when the point when EA3 comes out, it's like, oh, no, you guys had issues with the defense. No, this year, we finally nailed it down. It's going to be great for you guys. And people just eat it up and pay another $60, $100 for it. And it's the same game from last year. It's just different colors for their outfits, for their kits and stuff like that. and it annoys the hell out of me. It's like you ruin.
I mean, I could
go ahead.
I can see your point there, Marlon. I mean, I can, but I mean, going back to the core of it, you know, I've always said, like, at least for me, I prefer new stuff over sequels for the most part.
Gotcha.
Like, generally, I'm not saying there aren't, sequels of franchises I'm like, hell yeah, give me the next one. But I like to see something new and fresh and innovative succeed. And I kind of said this kind of towards the beginning of this generation. There really isn't much new anymore. It's all either sequels or it's different versions of the same style of game that we've gotten previously. Not many companies take chances anymore, and it's because of A, how much it costs to make games nowadays, and B, just consumers want X game. I mean, look at something like Fortnite. I mean, it's not a sequel. I mean, it's money that Epic is just pouring into a game that's still technically an open beta. I mean, and it's just they're putting all this money into it, and they can update it on the fly. They don't have to release the next game. They can just keep running with the same base that they're running with it. So I mean, I don't know. I just think that companies don't want to take the chance because the money's not there.
I'm glad that you bring that up. I've been feeling this way, and I sort of like don't really want to say it only because I feel like the Sony fans are gonna attack relentlessly. But I think that PS3, in terms of Sony's first party output, was much better than PS4's first party output. And I know some people may hear that and think it's like blasphemy, but I seriously believe that's just truth, and it's self-evident.
They took a lot more risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sort of think because their back was against the wall, they just needed to bear down and dig deeper and say, hey, listen, no one is going to get us out of this hole. Third parties aren't going to come and rescue us like they did with PS2, right? So we have to put the software out to showcase what the system can do. And they did that with games like Resistance and the games that spawned after that, Uncharted, Folklore, Lair, Warhawk. I mean, I can go on and on about
Folklore. That was such a freaking good game.
What was the other one? Which was, I call it the female God of War, Heavenly Sword.
Heavenly Sword. Yeah.
Right. So at the beginning of that generation, Sony really tried to put out new IP, and a lot of it caught on. I mean, I've talked about Resistance and Infamous and Uncharted. They brought back existing IP and made it even better with games like Killzone 2 and Killzone 3, God of War, for example. They really, MotorStorm was another IP that was new and took off.
I mean, if you think about it, those same studios are doing new IPs now with like Ghost of Tsushima and Death Stranding and stuff like that. Like those are all new IPs. Those are not sequels to anything.
No.
Last of Us is obviously, but
like for example, think of Naughty Dog. Like what new IP have they put out this generation? Nothing. They did Uncharted 4. They did The Lost Legacy. They did the remaster of The Last of Us, and now they're working on The Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
So this entire generation,
Naughty Dog has not done a new IP since Uncharted, the first Uncharted.
That's right.
Or no, since The Last of Us. Excuse me.
Since The Last of Us. You're right. Since The Last of Us.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they've only put out, 2 new IPs in the last 12 years because Uncharted 1 was 2007.
Yeah, that's right, 2007. I mean, look at.
You think they're gonna come out with a new one for this E3? Or you think
a new IP? No, absolutely not.
They are all on The Last of Us, all in on Last of Us 2.
It would be nice to see them come out with a new.
No, not something better, something new. I guess I could say the words because
Last of Us is kind of cream of the crop in terms of single player story based games, but.
And just as a fan of the industry, one of the cool dynamics that have switched. It's how I, as a consumer of games, rely on the first parties to give me the new IP that the third parties just don't anymore. When you think of the Sonys, when you think of the Microsofts, you can count on them, especially on the Sony side, giving you something
way more on the Sony side than the Microsoft side, unfortunately. I mean, Microsoft has its fair share of new IPs and exclusives, but yeah, Sony has everybody beat. Even almost. One could argue even Nintendo has Nintendo beat.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Not to rag on Nintendo, but they do rely on the same.
Yeah, I was
IP
gonna say,
over and over again.
this conversation kind of only really applies to, the Xbox and PlayStation. I mean, Nintendo, they kind of run with their old hat, and that's about it. No
Yeah.
offense to Nintendo fans. Like I play all those games and buy all those games too, but you can't deny that other than like Breath of the Wild, it's still Zelda.
Yeah, it's not a new IP.
Coat of paint, but it's not a new IP.
Like I think the newest IP that I can think of is
Splatoon
and ARMS.
ARMS. Yep.
Yeah, but I can't think of anything notable. I mean, I guess you could say Octopath Traveler, but that's a Square Enix property. I don't think Nintendo owns that.
Right.
So,
do you want to count Toad Treasure Tracker?
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, you could.
One could argue that.
Yeah,
The fact that we have to go that far kind of proves the point right there.
Yeah,
there you go.
That tells
Yeah,
you a lot.
But yeah, I mean, time will tell. We'll see. If consumers start to want something new, want something innovative, publishers and developers will have to adapt. But yeah, it remains to be seen.
And even then, what? Imagine if they come out with a new IP and the entire gaming industry goes, yeah, we don't like that.
Right.
No.
and that's the unfortunate gamble you take, and that's why most publishers don't do it anymore, or developers don't do it anymore. But that brings us to the end of the show. Chris, would you like to talk about what you have going on?
Well, with my show, Play Comics, I look at video games based on comic properties more to see how close they stick to that source material rather than how good the game actually is. So, like, recently we looked at Phantom 2040, which it's based on a cartoon, and the cartoon is like nothing like the comics from what I can tell at all. But the game it matches up with the cartoon really well.
Very cool.
So let me ask you, Chris, since you enjoy doing comic books, I want to ask you, what is your favorite superhero?
I've always been a Spider-Man guy, ever since I was little.
Fair.
Do you keep up with the current books?
Not really. I mean, part of why I'm doing the show is because I didn't read the comics growing up, so I was watching the cartoons and playing the games. So this is a way for me to kind of go back and look and see how much I learned back then was actually right and how much of it was just somebody taking liberties with the game.
Gotcha. So it gives you an opportunity to look at both sides of the coin as opposed to just one.
Right.
Unbelievers.
Very cool.
That's pretty cool. Besides Phantom 2040, which other projects have you worked on in that light in terms of, games being faithful to the original property?
A lot of the Superman stuff has been pretty accurate to the comics. I mean, you've always got that problem with Superman games where
he's OP as shit.
Yeah. You can't have first level enemies able to hurt Superman, but you have to just in the concept of the game.
Right.
Spider-Man stuff has tended to be pretty good. X-Men stuff has been all over the place.
What about Batman?
Batman usually is pretty good too, from what I've seen.
Especially the Arkham trilogy. Have you done those? Have you done anything that modern, or do you mostly stick to older stuff?
I'm going roughly chronologically. And
okay.
The example I throw out to everybody is, so I'm not comparing Arkham to that NES Batman game that everybody loves.
Right.
Because, I mean, once you start playing PS3 stuff in that era, it's really hard to go back and fairly look at Super Nintendo games.
Unless they're like the cream of the crop, like, Zelda Link to the Past or something like that.
Oh,
like,
yeah. I mean,
but yeah, the older stuff, the more obscure SNES games, like, yeah, once you've gotten into the modern gaming, it's very difficult to go back to some of that stuff, for sure.
There was one Batman game on SNES that I loved playing as a kid. It was the animated series one. I remember, like, you're on this roller coaster, and then there's this other, like, this boss fight early on where we're facing off against a Nutcracker. And
that one's great.
Yeah, that's an awesome game. I love it.
Sticks with the cartoon really well, which sticks with the comic really well. And I got really lucky and had Chris Sims on for that one, who's written a bunch of stuff for Marvel and some other people.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's really cool, dude.
Very cool, dude. Very cool. Well, we want to thank you for being on with us tonight. We appreciate it. You had a smile on your face the whole time, from what I could tell. So,
No, I always love going on other people's shows. So, thanks for letting me come on.
absolutely, anytime.
No, thanks for coming on, dude. Really appreciate it.
it.
But that's all we have for you this week. We'll be doing more. We did, real quick, I do want to touch on, we did our rebranding of AEG this past week, last Friday. A new logo, new banner on our Twitter. We are also announced the return of Oldies and Coldies. We'll be starting that back up in the fall. And then Colt, or Danny, depending on what you want to call him, and I are going to be starting doing our own show that will premiere May 23rd at 8 Eastern. It's called The Grind. We're going to be looking at different co-op and competitive games. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe we know what we're doing for our first stream. And it's we'll just say it's an Xbox exclusive. We're going to be streaming it on Mixer through my personal Mixer channel at JB the Gentleman. So definitely check that out.
Yar!
Yeah, oh, look at you. But yeah, look forward to that here in about another 10 days. So I'm looking forward to starting that up with you guys. That'll be every other week that we'll be doing episodes. So looking forward to that.
Yes, we are. Okay, we are looking forward to making you look at our beautiful Jeff over here making a complete mess of himself.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be pretty fun for sure. But as always, thank you guys for listening to the AEG Show. You can find us on the interwebs at the AEG Show, pretty much on anything, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, all that stuff. Follow us, check us out there. And until next week, thank you for listening.